In 2007, you received military documents saying that U.S. troops were given authority to go into countries like Iran and Syria to hunt down Saddam Hussein's followers and alleged terrorists. What happened with that?
This is a very important document. We worked with the New York Times reporter Eric Schmidt to expose this document and its context, and that was a leading article in the Times. The Iranian government saw that, and then the foreign minister at that time, I can't remember his name, held a press conference saying Iranian territory should not be entered by the United States. This is not acceptable to have rules that permit US troops to enter into Iranian territory under their own decision. And it appears that those are no longer, in fact, we know, because we just released the 2008 version, that that is no longer in the rules of engagement for US troops. That is a significant advance. Many wars have been started from these border skirmishes where, for some maybe reasonable reason, troops from one country cross the border in pursuit of smugglers or terrorists into another country, and then the other country engages on them, and then there's a back and forth, and the situation escalates, and there's outrage in the various countries, and it makes the countries enemies, and a war starts. So I think it's not unreasonable to assume that there was about a 5% chance that that document helped stop a war between the United States and Iran. Remember, this is in the context of 2007. This is when Bush's neocons were at their height in trying to foment some sort of conflict or hostility between Iran and the United States. Fortunately, that didn't happen, not just as a result of this document, but as a result of several people, good people within the US administration, being unhappy about this and resigning or coming out in the press and saying that that was what was going on, and calling to stop it. Daniel Ellsberg, the famous whistleblower who leaked the Pentagon Papers here in the 1970s, he called tirelessly again and again for people to come out and leak information about the plans to have a war with Iran. Cy Hirsch published information saying that there were attempts to try and push for some sort of kind of conflict with Iran. And so I think a combination of all these, our efforts and these other groups' efforts, ended up stopping that kind of conflict from going ahead, and that's a great thing.
I think it's interesting that you worked so closely with the New York Times. WikiLeaks also worked very closely with the Washington Post when WikiLeaks received a manual regarding Guantanamo, telling secrets like detainees were being intimidated by dogs. What happened with that?
We got hold of the 2003 manual for Guantanamo Bay, which was authored by the then commander, General Miller. That is the same general who went to Abu Ghraib and set up Abu Ghraib in response to a request by Donald Rumsfeld saying, go to Abu Ghraib and gitmoise it, turn it into another Gitmo. Take the lessons you have learned in Guantanamo Bay and apply them to Abu Ghraib. And those abuses in Abu Ghraib occurred after that. So it's very interesting to sort of look at the progression of this abuse. And we see for the initial 2003 manual for Guantanamo that there was a policy of hiding people from the Red Cross for 1 month, a breach of the Geneva Conventions, not only just not allowing the Red Cross to see them, but hiding them, pretending that they weren't there at all, falsifying records. So it says in the manual for Guantanamo Bay that records should be falsified. Also that every initial prisoner is to be held in maximum penalty conditions when they first come in solitary confinement, and then as a sort of softening up process for interrogation. Now, when that information came out, the spokesperson for Guantanamo Bay said, oh, that was under Jeffrey Miller. That was under the previous general in 2003, and even by the next year it had all changed. There was a new commander who came in. That statement stimulated another source to provide us with the 2004 manual. And then we compared every letter of difference between 2003 and 2004 and showed, no, it didn't get better, it got significantly worse. there was a show camp that was set up in 2004, Camp 4, which was a place that had guards just for their media and public relations skills. This is where you would take journalists and visiting foreign MPs to show them Guantanamo wasn't so bad after all. The language had changed to remove all references to, say, suicide and call this self-harm, and a number of other problems. We worked with the Center for Constitutional Rights, based here in New York, who provide many of the lawyers for the Guantanamo Bay detainees, to go over that and analyze it and assess it and get it out.
I only have time for one more question, and it is, do you fear for your personal safety? Do you fear that anyone may be coming after you, fear for your life, fear that you may be jailed?
No. None of us act like fools. So there are certain countries where it can be dangerous to do things. So there may be problems with me going to China, as an example. But here in the West, it's in no one's career interest to do anything like that to us. I mean, the backlash would be so extraordinary that it would be sort of some kind of career suicide. So it's in no one individual's self-interest, from the CIA to the military, to do anything like that. So it doesn't get done. So even if you might say, well, is it in the sort of CIA's institutional interest? Well, maybe. But it's not in any one individual's interest to do that, so it's not going to happen. Also, we have a lot of supporters, including within the US military. Those people leak us information about us. So when US counterintelligence started writing reports about us in 2008, those reports came to us and we released them. So I think it was quite hard for many governments to try and move against us in that way, because we have such extensive support in the mainstream media, amongst human rights activists, lawyers, and in intelligence organizations themselves. I think they have some respect for us, that we are in fact doing what they want to do. I mean, if you're a spy or an intelligence agent, basically you're an investigative journalist who isn't able to publish. You're not able to tell the public all the things that you wanted to tell them. So we're a bit like that, except we can tell the public. So I think in some ways, amongst the good people in the intelligence community, there's a degree of camaraderie with what we do. I mean, they know that we're after the bad guys. I mean, we don't want to expose the good intelligence operations that are happening. We're after the bad guys as well, the abuses that occur. And I think individual intelligence officers in the United States and in many other countries understand that and are supportive.
Thank you so much for this very interesting and insightful conversation.